Welcome back to Whispers in the Dark, the channel where we delve into the depths of the most haunting and chilling tales of true crime. These stories are not for the faint of heart, as we uncover the dark realities that lurk just beneath the surface of society. Today, we're unraveling one of the most sinister and disturbing cases ever recorded in American criminal history, the terrifying tale of the Boneyard Killers, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. Imagine a secluded cabin hidden away in the forests of Northern California, where the peaceful silence of nature masks unspeakable horrors. A place where innocence was brutally extinguished, and the darkest desires of two men were given free rein. This is the story of how these two individuals, driven by a shared obsession with control and domination, committed some of the most grotesque and shocking crimes that would forever scar the American psyche. As we take you through this harrowing journey, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Whispers in the Dark, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the twisted tales that remind us of the evil lurking in the shadows. And if this story grips you as it did us, give it a thumbs up and share it with those who have the courage to confront the darkness. To understand the monstrosity that Leonard Lake would become, we must first delve into the events that shaped his early years. Born on October 29, 1945, in San Francisco, California, Leonard Lake was the product of a broken home. His parents' marriage dissolved when he was still a young child, thrusting him into a world of instability and emotional turmoil. Raised by his grandmother, Lake grew up in a strict and often cold environment. This lack of warmth and nurturing would leave deep psychological scars that would manifest in disturbing ways later in life. From a young age, Lake exhibited troubling behavior. He developed an intense fascination with pornography, which, in the 1950s, was not as readily accessible as it is today. This obsession was coupled with a growing fixation on the idea of total control over others, particularly women. He began to fantasize about creating a world where he held absolute power, where he could dominate and control those around him without consequence. In 1964, Lake enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, seeking structure and discipline that his civilian life lacked. He was sent to Vietnam, where he served a tour of duty. The horrors of war, combined with the already dark inclinations within him, only served to deepen his psychological disturbances. The violence and death he witnessed in Vietnam desensitized him further, blurring the lines between morality and brutality. It was here that Lake's fantasies of domination began to take a more concrete and dangerous form. On the other side of the world, Charles Cheetah Ng was born on December 24, 1960, in Hong Kong. Unlike Lake, Ng was born into a wealthy family, but this did not translate to a happy childhood. Ng's father was a strict disciplinarian, imposing rigid expectations and resorting to harsh punishments whenever those expectations were not met. This oppressive environment bred deep resentment and anger in Ng, emotions that he struggled to contain as he grew older. In an attempt to reform his increasingly rebellious son, Ng's father sent him to a boarding school in England. However, the change in environment did little to curb Ng's destructive tendencies. He was expelled from several schools for theft and violent behavior. Unable to conform to the expectations placed upon him, Ng's criminal behavior escalated, culminating in his eventual move to the United States. Ng's arrival in the US marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one that would lead him down a dark and deadly path. He enrolled in college, but his academic career was short-lived. Ng dropped out after just one semester and soon found himself in trouble with the law. After a brief stint in the US Marine Corps, where he was court-martialed for stealing weapons, Ng was dishonorably discharged. His life of crime was just beginning, and it would only escalate from here. By the late 1970s, Leonard Lake had begun to immerse himself in the survivalist culture, a subculture that thrived on the belief that society was on the brink of collapse. Lake's bunker, located in a remote area of Wilsonville, California, was initially built as a safe haven in preparation for the societal breakdown he believed was imminent. But for Lake, the bunker was not just a place of refuge. It was the physical manifestation of his darkest fantasies, a fortress where he could exercise total control over those he deemed inferior. It was during this period that Lake crossed paths with Charles Ng. The two men met through a shared interest in survivalism and their mutual disdain for societal norms. Their connection was instantaneous and deeply troubling. Both men harbored fantasies of domination, violence, and control, and together, they found the perfect partner in crime. Lake and Eng's relationship was symbiotic. Lake, the older and more experienced of the two, saw in Ng a willing accomplice who was eager to act out the violent fantasies that he himself had long harbored. Ng, on the other hand, was drawn to Lake's confidence and his twisted vision of the world. Under Lake's influence, Ng's latent violent tendencies were fully unleashed, setting the stage for a killing spree that would shock the nation. Leonard Lake's bunker was more than just a survivalist retreat. It was a carefully constructed chamber of horrors, designed to fulfill his darkest fantasies. Built with painstaking precision, the bunker was divided into several sections, each serving a different, sinister purpose. There were living quarters, where Lake could carry out his day-to-day life, and a series of hidden rooms that were far more disturbing. The most notorious of these rooms was the Operation Miranda Suite, named after a character from a novel Lake was obsessed with. John Fowles, the Collector. In the novel, the protagonist kidnaps a young woman named Miranda and keeps her imprisoned in a basement, an idea that resonated deeply with Lake. The suite was outfitted with soundproof walls, hidden cameras, and restraints, everything needed to fulfill Lake's twisted vision of complete control. Lake documented his plans in a series of journals, writing extensively about his desire to create a society where he was the ultimate authority. He envisioned a world where women were subservient, where they existed solely to serve the needs of their male captors. Lake's writings are chilling in their detail, outlining the methods he would use to train his captives to be obedient and submissive. Charles Ng, fully indoctrinated by Lake's philosophy, was an eager participant in this nightmarish project. Together, they would lure victims to the bunker, where the true extent of their depravity would be unleashed. The victims of Leonard Lake and Charles Ng were not just nameless, faceless individuals. They were sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, friends, and lovers. Each had a life, dreams, and aspirations, all brutally cut short by the malevolent actions of two men who saw them as nothing more than pawns in their twisted game. Lake and Ng's victims came from various walks of life. Some were targeted because they were vulnerable, others because they happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Among the known victims were the Dubs family, Harvey, Deborah, and their young son, Sean. The Dubs were a normal, loving family who had no way of knowing the horrors that awaited them when they crossed paths with Lake and Ng. Another tragic case was that of Paul Costner, a San Francisco car dealer who had the misfortune of selling a vehicle to Leonard Lake. Costner was lured to the Wilseyville property under the guise of completing the sale, only to be overpowered and imprisoned in the bunker. The exact number of victims remains unknown, as many were never identified. It is believed that Lake and Ng may have murdered up to 25 people. Their remains scattered in and around the property, buried in shallow graves or hidden in makeshift cremation pits. On June 2, 1985, Charles Ng was caught shoplifting a vice from a hardware store in South San Francisco. When the police were called, Ng fled the scene, leaving behind his accomplice, Leonard Lake. It was this seemingly minor incident that would unravel the entire gruesome operation. When officers arrived on the scene, they found Lake waiting in the parking lot. Under questioning, Lake was evasive and nervous, which led the officers to search his vehicle. Inside, they discovered a loaded handgun with a silencer, as well as items that linked Lake to the disappearances of several missing persons. Lake was arrested and taken into custody, but before investigators could uncover the full extent of his crimes, Lake ingested a cyanide pill he had hidden in his clothing. He slipped into a coma and died 4 days later, taking many of his dark secrets with him to the grave. However, Lake's death did not bring an end to the investigation. Detectives began searching Lake's property in Wilseyville, where they uncovered a scene of unimaginable horror. The bunker, meticulously designed by Lake, contained videotapes documenting the torture and murder of several victims, as well as extensive written records detailing Lake and Ng's plans. The remains of at least 12 individuals were discovered on the property, though it is believed the true number of victims may be much higher. Charles Ng, now a fugitive, fled to Canada, where he would remain at large for over a month before being captured. His arrest marked the beginning of a lengthy legal battle that would drag on 4 years. The trial of Charles Ng was one of the most expensive and protracted in American history, spanning over a decade due to numerous delays, appeals, and legal complications. After his capture in Calgary, Alberta, in 1985, Ng fought extradition to the United States for 6 years, claiming that he would not receive a fair trial and would face the death penalty. Despite these efforts, Ng was eventually extradited to California in 1991 to stand trial for the murders committed at the Wilseyville property. The case was further delayed by Ng's constant attempts to manipulate the legal system, including changing defense attorneys multiple times and filing numerous motions. His behavior during the trial was erratic, often marked by bizarre outbursts and a refusal to cooperate with his legal team. Finally, in 1999, 14 years after his arrest, Charles Ng was convicted of 11 counts of murder. The evidence against him was overwhelming, including the videotapes recovered from the bunker, which showed Ng participating in the torture and murder of several victims. Despite the brutality of his crimes, Ng continued to plead innocence, blaming Lake for the murders and portraying himself as a reluctant participant. The jury found Ng guilty, and he was sentenced to death. He currently resides on death row in San Quentin State Prison, where he continues to file appeals, delaying the final resolution of his case. For the families of his victims, the wait for justice has been agonizingly long, a cruel reminder of the evil that took their loved ones away. The legacy of Leonard Lake and Charles Ng is one of horror, a dark chapter in American criminal history that serves as a chilling reminder of what human beings are capable of when consumed by their darkest desires. The crimes they committed were not only brutal and inhumane, but also deeply premeditated, carried out with a cold, calculating precision that still haunts those who have studied the case. For the families of the victims, the pain and suffering caused by Lake and Ng's actions will never fully heal. The loss of their loved ones, compounded by the gruesome nature of their deaths, is a wound that time cannot easily mend. The case has left a lasting impact on the community, serving as a grim cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the depths of human depravity. As we conclude this harrowing tale, we remember the victims not for the way their lives ended, but for the lives they lived. Their stories deserve to be told, not as footnotes in the history of crime, but as reminders of the preciousness of life and the importance of justice. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the darkness. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing to Whispers in the Dark for more deep dives into the world of true crime. Don't forget to hit the notification bell, like this video, and share it with others who have a fascination with the macabre. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that walk among us. Next time on Whispers in the Dark, we explore another chilling case that defies explanation. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and your mind open to the whispers that surround us all.